Greetings, students, and welcome back to another week of keywords and concepts. So this week we are into the American Revolution and its aftermath. So actually a unit set entirely in America. I know you'll be pretty excited about that. So for our first keywords and concepts slide here, we have a lot of keywords and concepts surrounding why the Brits wouldn't leave us alone, right? Um, we were really far away from them, guys, 3,000 miles by ocean before machinery, right? This was really quite far for them to go to keep their colonies. So why did they do that? Well, let's talk about it. First thing you need to know, we learned about the separatists. We learned about the original pilgrims and what they actually were called, which was separatists. What you need to know is that their children were terrible separatists. Okay, their parents may have been very, very religious and very observant, but the kids were not. The kids were so not. The kids were very good capitalists, though. The kids were very good at making money here, but they did not necessarily share their parents' religious views. So that's starting to go away in New England, which is starting to drive a lot of this because people are no longer looking just for religious freedom. They also want economic freedom, right? And this a little bit ties into our gold unit. So they mentioned El Dorado, and I realized we actually didn't cover the original gold story in our gold unit, which is sad. So if you'll remember, El Dorado is actually like the original gold myth. El Dorado is the idea of a city of gold, a whole city made of gold, somewhere mysteriously in the Americas, right? And this was very popular amongst the Spanish, and of course that got over to the English and everybody else. And we saw this with many of our videos, people coming to Virginia and Massachusetts and places like this, thinking they'd be full of gold. They were not, right? They were definitely not full of gold. We have gold, just not there. So they were a little disappointed, but not entirely, because they figured out there were lots of other things here that were just as good as gold. We learned originally about tobacco, but two that are coming up for this week are going to be timber and cod. So for timber, remember guys, England's a very tiny island, and it's trying to run the world with ships, which are built with wood. They had no forests left. The forests that they had left belonged to the king, and you weren't allowed to chop them down. So what were they doing? They were taking our trees, like all of our trees, lots of our trees. We didn't like it. We wanted our own trees for our own ships, so that we could build our own navy and stuff, right? So they definitely needed us for the timber. Another big thing was cod. There was overfishing problems in Europe around about the time they pushed out to the Americas. It was part of the reason they did it. So there was a huge trade in salted cod, which was literally a food staple. It's where most of Europe got their protein, because it could keep a really long time, really efficient storage, that kind of thing. And it was abundant here, absolutely abundant. So cod was another big one. And then finally, and this one's kind of sad, but it's true. In 1619, we get the arrival of the first enslaved folks here in America. They were actually brought here by pirates, who raided a Spanish slave ship, and took their cargo and then traded them for supplies in Virginia. So we're starting to get this base of free labor, in addition to all of our natural resources. So America's very valuable to them right now. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about why we were done with Britain. See you then.